I'm Daniel, a man who thought he had it all figured out. My wife, Elise, and I built a life in a cozy Seattle suburb. Our home a sanctuary of cedar walls and warm lamplight. For 12 years, we wove our dreams together. She, a graphic designer with a laugh like wind chimes, and I, a software engineer who found joy in her every quirk. Our mornings were coffee rituals, her teasing me about my terrible latte art, our evenings filled with board games or binge-watching quirky documentaries. We were the couple friends envied, the ones who seemed to defy the monotony of time. But beneath the surface, something shifted. It was subtle at first, like a crack in a foundation you don't notice until the wall's grown. Elise started staying late at her studio, her phone buzzing with messages she'd dismiss as client nonsense. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my compass, my North Star. Yet her eyes, once open books, began to hide chapters. I'd catch her staring out windows, lost in thoughts she wouldn't share. I chalked it up to stress, maybe a creative block. I'd bring her tea, massage her shoulders, and she'd smile. But it was a smile that didn't reach her soul. One evening, I found a sketch in her notebook. A man's face, angular, unfamiliar, drawn with an intimacy that twisted my gut. "Who's this?" I asked, half laughing to mask unease. "Just a character," she said, snapping the book shut. I wanted to believe her, but doubt is a seed that grows in silence. I started noticing patterns. Her phone locked with a new password. Her weekends filled with vague errands. I'd lie awake, her sleeping form beside me, wondering if I was paranoid or if the woman I loved was slipping away. I decided to trust my instincts, not my fears. I plan a surprise, reignite our spark. A weekend getaway, maybe to the Oregon coast where we'd fallen in love years ago. I booked a cabin, imagining us laughing over campfire esmores, her hand in mine. I didn't tell her yet, wanting the reveal to be perfect. But as I planned, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. A coffee shop I didn't know. Dated a day she'd said she was working late. It was nothing, I told myself. Just coffee. Yet, my heart thudded with a rhythm I couldn't ignore. I wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. I needed proof, or maybe I needed courage. Either way, the quiet of our home felt heavier, like the air before a storm you can't outrun. The receipt haunted me. It was from a place called Brew and Muse, a hipster cafe downtown I'd never heard Elise mention. I tried to shrug it off, maybe a client meeting, a quick break. But the date, a Tuesday evening when she'd texted me about a late project, gnawed at my logic. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband snooping through his wife's life, but curiosity is a cruel master. I decided to visit Brew and Muse not to spy, but to understand. The cafe was a maze of exposed brick and mismatched furniture, smelling of roasted beans and pretension. I ordered a flat white, scanning the crowd. Artists, students, nobody who screamed, "Secret rendezvous." The barista, a guy with a man bun and a sleeve of tattoos, seemed to know everyone. I wondered if he'd seen Elise. I pulled up a photo on my phone, casual as I could manage. "Hey, ever seen this woman? She's my wife. Loves this place." He squinted, then nodded. "Yeah, she's been in. Usually with some dude, tall, artsy type. They're like, super cozy." My stomach lurched. Cozy. The word was a blade, but I forced a smile, thanked him, and left. Back home, I rifled through Elise's things, guilt warring with desperation. In her desk drawer, I found a business card. Julian Voss, curator, Voss Gallery. The name hit like a punch. Julian was a local art scene legend, a charismatic figure who'd once critiqued Elise's work at a gallery opening. She'd gushed about his vision for weeks. Was he the face in her sketch? I Googled him. Julian's face filled my screen. Sharp jaw, piercing eyes, the kind of guy who looked like he belonged in a cologne ad. His gallery's Instagram showed him at openings, Elise in the background of one photo, her smile too bright, her hand on his arm. I felt my world tilt. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but fear stopped me. What if I was wrong? What if I broke us over nothing? That night, Elise came home late, her hair mussed, Her excuse, a client dinner. I nodded, playing the oblivious husband, but my mind raced. I started tracking patterns, her late nights, her guarded phone, the way she'd flinch when I touched her unexpectedly. I installed a tracking app on our shared tablet, one she used for work. Felt dirty, but I needed truth. The app pinged her location the next evening. Not her studio, but an address downtown. Voss Gallery. My heart sank, but I didn't storm in. I needed a plan, a way to catch her in the act without losing myself to rage. The stranger's shadow was growing, and I was determined to step into its light. The tracking app became my obsession, a digital leash I hated but couldn't release. Elisa's movements painted a story I didn't want to read. Her studio, our home, and too often Voss Gallery. I'd sit at my desk, coding by day, spying by night, my life a split screen of normalcy and suspicion. I'd cook dinner, laugh at her stories, all while my mind screamed, "Who is she with?" I wasn't just losing her. I was losing me, the man who believed in trust, in us. One night, I followed her. She'd said she was meeting a client at a wine bar, but the app showed her at the gallery. I parked a block away, my pulse a drumbeat. The gallery's windows glowed, silhouettes moving like ghosts. I saw her, her auburn hair unmistakable, her laugh cutting through the glass. Julian was there, his hand grazing her waist as they admired a painting. It wasn't blatant, no stolen kisses, but it was intimate, a dance of glances and touches that spoke louder than words. I wanted to barge in, to shatter their bubble, but I froze. I wasn't ready to face the truth, not like this. Instead, I dug deeper. I hacked into her email, years of trust reduced to a password guess. Starry Night 12, her favorite painting. Most messages were mundane, but one thread with Julian stood out. They discussed art, yes, but the tone was flirtatious, coded with inside jokes and late-night meetups. One email mentioned a private showing at his loft, with a winking emoji. My blood boiled. A loft. Not a gallery, not a cafe, but his personal space. I pictured them there, her sketches coming to life in ways I couldn't unsee. I started documenting everything, screenshots, app pings, even photos from my stakeouts. It was methodical, like coding a program to catch a bug. But this bug was my marriage, and every discovery tightened the noose around my heart. I noticed Elisa's new habits. A jasmine perfume she'd never worn, a scarf I didn't recognize, her humming songs I didn't know. She was living a parallel life, one where I was a ghost. I confronted her once, gently. "You seem distant," I said over dinner. "Everything okay?" Her eyes flickered, but she smiled, blaming work stress. She reached for my hand, and for a moment, I wanted to believe her. But the app pinged later that night, Julian's loft again. I didn't sleep. I planned. Revenge wasn't my nature, but betrayal changes a man. I wouldn't just expose her. I'd make her feel the weight of her choices. I'd use her art, her passion, to craft a trap so cruel it would haunt her as she'd haunted me. The unseen dance was ending, and I'd choreograph the final steps. I became a shadow in my own life, playing the doting husband while plotting behind a mask. Elisa's betrayal was no longer a question but a fact, carved into my bones by every late-night gallery visit, every coded email. I needed evidence that would leave no room for her lies, something undeniable. But more than that, I needed a way to turn her world upside down, to make her feel the betrayal's sting as I did. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about confrontation. It was about revelation, a slow burn that would consume her carefully curated facade. I started by infiltrating her world. I created a fake Instagram account, posing as an art collector named Evan Bryce. I followed Julian's gallery, liked Elisa's posts, and commented just enough to seem legitimate. I studied their patterns, their pretentious art lingo, their egos. Julian posted about an upcoming exhibit, a boundary-pushing showcase of local talent. Elise was featured, her name in bold on the flyer. Perfect. I RSVP'd as Evan, claiming interest in investing. Julian, ever the opportunist, responded with a private message, inviting me to a pre-show dinner with select artists. I knew Elise would be there. The dinner was at a swanky rooftop restaurant, all glass and candlelight. I arrived in a tailored suit, my face partially obscured by glasses and a trimmed beard I'd grown for the ruse. Elise didn't recognize me. She was too busy laughing at Julian's side, her hand brushing his arm. I mingled, my voice lowered, my questions about her work calculated. "Your pieces have such intimacy," I said to her, watching her blush. "Inspired by someone special?" She faltered, then recovered with a vague answer about life's muses. Julian's smirk told me everything. I recorded it all, her glances, their touches, on a hidden camera in my glasses. Later, I hacked the gallery's security feed, pulling footage of their late-night meetings. The evidence piled up: emails, videos, even a voice memo from Elise's phone I'd accessed, her whispering to Julian about our secret. Each piece was a brick in the wall I'd build to trap her. But evidence wasn't enough. I wanted her to unravel publicly, where her art, her identity, lived. I began planting seeds. As Evan, I emailed Julian, praising Elise's work but hinting at rumors of unprofessional conduct. I suggested her art might be too personal, tied to questionable inspirations. Julian, predictably, got defensive, but I knew he'd gossip. The art world thrives on scandal, and I was lighting the fuse. At home, I kept up the charade, kissing Elise goodnight while my mind spun with plans. The masquerade was exhausting, but it fueled me. She thought she was dancing in the dark, but I was rewriting the music, and the finale would be merciless. The exhibit was days away, and my plan was a masterpiece in motion. A canvas of deception painted with Elise's own colors. I'd spent weeks as Evan Bryce, weaving myself into the art world's fabric. Julian, greedy for my fictional wealth, invited me to the gallery's inner circle, unaware I was Daniel, the husband he'd cuckolded. Elise, oblivious, poured her soul into her exhibit pieces. Canvases of bold lines and hidden figures, each one, I suspected, a love letter to Julian. I'd use her art to expose her, to turn her passion into her punishment. I dug deeper into her digital life, accessing her cloud storage. There, I found her private sketches, dozens of Julian, his face rendered with a tenderness that gutted me. One painting, unfinished, showed two figures entwined, their features vague but unmistakably hers and his. It was her centerpiece for the exhibit, titled Unveiled Truth. The irony was delicious. I'd make sure the truth was unveiled, but not as she intended. I hired a hacker to embed a subtle code in the gallery's digital display system, one that would override her presentation at the exhibit's climax. As Evan, I fed Julian's ego, suggesting a bold twist for the show. A live reveal of Elise's inspiration. He loved the idea, thinking it would draw buzz. I proposed projecting her sketches alongside her paintings, claiming it would humanize her process. Julian agreed, unaware I'd supply the sketches, those private ones of him. I also leaked whispers to local art blogs, anonymous tips about Elise's intimate ties to her curator. The rumors spread, setting the stage for a public reckoning. At home, Elise was a whirlwind of nerves and excitement, oblivious to my double life. "This show could change everything," she said, her eyes alight. I nodded, hiding my fury behind a smile. I helped her pack her canvases, my hands brushing the work that betrayed me. Each touch fueled my resolve. I wasn't just a scorned husband. I was a sculptor, chiseling her downfall with precision. The night before the exhibit, I tested the gallery's hack. My code worked flawlessly, ready to project her sketches at my command. I also prepared a final touch, a printed booklet, to be distributed at the show, detailing Elise and Julian's collaboration with screenshots and emails. I'd mail it to attendees as Evan, ensuring maximum impact. As I lay beside her that night, her breathing soft, I felt no guilt, only clarity. She'd chosen this path, woven her lies into her art. I was merely the curator of her consequences, and tomorrow, her canvas would burn in the light of truth, leaving her to face a crowd that knew her too well. The night before the exhibit, our home was a theater of pretense. Elise flitted about, packing her portfolio, her excitement a blade in my chest. "This is my moment, Daniel," she said, her eyes gleaming with dreams I no longer shared. I nodded, pouring her wine, my smile a mask forged in weeks of betrayal's fire. Inside, I was a furnace, fueled by her sketches of Julian, her emails, her secret life. My plan was set. The gallery's digital display hacked, the incriminating booklet printed, the art world abuzz with my planted rumors. Tomorrow, her unveiled truth would become her undoing. Couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, reviewing the evidence, screenshots, videos, the voice memo of her whispering to Julian. Each piece was a thread in the noose I'd crafted. The booklet, my masterstroke, was a glossy exposé, titled Art of Deception, featuring her emails and sketches, captioned with biting commentary. I'd mailed copies to key attendees, critics, collectors, her peers, under Evan Bryce's name. The hacker's code was ready to project her private drawings of Julian Midshow, turning her art into a public confession. I felt like a playwright, scripting her fall with her own words. Elise slept soundly, unaware of the storm I'd summoned. I watched her, tracing the face I'd loved, now a stranger's. Her jasmine perfume, once a mystery, was Julian's gift. I'd found the receipt. I wondered how she justified it, if she ever felt guilt. Did she laugh at my trust, my dinners, my getaway plans? The thought hardened my resolve. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice, a mirror to her lies. I'd expose her where it hurt most. Her art, her identity, her pride. I rehearsed my role as Evan Bryce. I'd attend the exhibit, blend into the crowd, and trigger the hack at the perfect moment. I'd watch her face as her world crumbled, her lover's dance laid bare. But doubt crept in, not about her guilt, but about me. Was I becoming the monster, orchestrating this cruelty? I pushed it aside. She'd chosen Julian, chosen secrecy. I was merely the consequence. As dawn broke, I dressed in my disguise. Beard trimmed, glasses polished, and left a note for Elise. "Good luck tonight. Proud of you." The lie tasted bitter, but it was my final act as the husband she'd discarded. The eve of revelation was over. The curtain was about to rise, and I held the strings to her unraveling. The gallery was a cathedral of pretense, its white walls aglow with ambition and wine-fueled chatter. I arrived as Evan Bryce, my suit crisp, my demeanor aloof. The crowd buzzed. Critics in turtlenecks, collectors flashing Rolexes, artists starving for validation. Elise stood near her centerpiece. Unveiled truth, radiant in an emerald dress, Julian at her side like a shadow she welcomed. Their ease, their shared glances, twisted my gut, but I stayed composed, sipping champagne, nodding at small talk. I was a ghost in their world, unseen but omnipotent. Her paintings lined the walls, bold and intimate, each stroke a betrayal. I overheard a critic praise her raw vulnerability, and I nearly laughed. If only they knew how raw it would get. The booklets had arrived. I saw attendees flipping through them, their whispers growing. "Is this true?" One woman murmured, showing a page with Elise's email to Julian. "Your loft feels like home." The rumor mill churned, and I felt the first sparks of my plan igniting. Julian, oblivious, schmoozed a collector, while Elise greeted guests, her smile a fragile veneer. I mingled, dropping subtle barbs as Evan. "Her work's so personal," I said to a blogger. "Almost too revealing, don't you think?" She nodded, typing furiously. I checked my phone. The hack was ready, a single tap to override the display. The show's climax was near, Elise's speech, where she'd unveil her centerpiece. I'd timed the projection to interrupt her, flashing her sketches of Julian across the screen. The crowd would see her muse, her lover, in every line she'd drawn. Elise took the stage, her voice steady, thanking Julian for his guidance. The irony was thick. I positioned myself near the back, my finger hovering over the trigger. But then she looked my way, not at Evan, but through me, as if sensing Daniel beneath the disguise. My heart stuttered. Did she know? No, it was impossible. Yet her eyes held a flicker of something, Guilt, perhaps, or fear. He humanized her, and for a moment, I wavered. Could I destroy her like this, in front of everyone she admired? The moment passed. She'd chosen this stage, this lie. I remembered her laughter in Julian's loft, her hand on his arm. I pressed the button. The screen flickered, and her speech faltered as her sketches appeared. Not the curated ones, but the private ones. Julian's face, their entwined figures, raw and unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elise froze, her face draining of color. Julian rushed to the projector, but it was too late. The gallery's glow had turned harsh, exposing her secrets to the world she'd courted. I stood still, my heart a drum, watching the first cracks in her carefully painted life. The gallery fell into a shattering silence, the kind that follows a glass dropped on marble. Elise stood on the stage, her mouth open, her eyes locked on the screen where her sketches of Julian loomed like accusations. The crowd's gasps turned to murmurs, then a crescendo of whispers. "Is that him?" someone said, pointing at Julian, who fumbled with the projector, his face a mask of panic. The booklets circulated faster now, pages rustling as attendees read the emails, the captions, the proof of her infidelity. I, as Evan, stood at the edge, my pulse steady, my work unfolding like a dark symphony. Elisa's voice cracked as she tried to speak. This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, but the crowd was beyond her. A critic scoffed, a collector turned away. Julian, abandoning the projector, grabbed her arm, whispering fiercely, but she shook him off, her eyes darting wildly. I saw it then, the moment she realized her world was collapsing, her art no longer a shield but a noose. I wanted to feel triumph, but all I felt was a hollow ache, the ghost of our love watching from the shadows. I stepped closer, blending with the crowd, my glasses catching the light. Someone thrust a booklet at me, open to a photo of Elise and Julian at Brew and Muse, their hands entwined. "Disgraceful," the woman muttered. I nodded, my voice low. Art, Evan Bryce was a phantom, but his work was real and it was everywhere. The bloggers were live-tweeting hashtags like #ArtBetrayal trending. I'd planned this, but the scale of it, the raw humiliation, hit me harder than expected. Elise wasn't just losing her career. She was losing her identity, the artist she'd built herself to be. She fled the stage, pushing through the crowd, her dress catching on a chair. Julian followed, calling her name, but the crowd's judgment was a wall between them. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. My revenge was alive, spreading like ink in water. But I wasn't done. I'd planned one final twist, a personal strike to ensure she'd never forget this night. I slipped out, heading to my car, where I'd stashed a package, a replica of her centerpiece, altered to reflect the truth. I'd deliver it to her studio, a reminder of her betrayal, etched in her own style. As I drove, I wondered what she'd do next. Would she deny it, spin a story, or crumble? I didn't care, not really. She'd woven this betrayal into her art, her life, and I'd merely held up a mirror. The shattering silence was hers to bear, and I was already planning the final note of her requiem. I didn't return home that night. The gallery's chaos replayed in my mind. Elisa's pale face, Julian's futile scrambling, the crowd's merciless judgment. I'd won, but victory tasted like ash. I checked into a hotel, my Evan Bryce disguise discarded, my beard shaved, my glasses gone. I was Daniel again, but a Daniel I barely recognized, hardened by betrayal and vengeance. My phone buzzed with notifications, art blogs dissecting the scandal, X posts with clips of Elisa's sketches, her career imploding in real time. I muted it, needing silence to plan my final move. The package waited in my trunk, a canvas I'd commissioned from a local artist, a twisted twin of Elisa's Unveiled truth. Where her painting showed vague, romantic figures, mine was explicit. Her and Julian, their faces clear, their intimacy mocked in her own bold style. I'd added a plaque, "Truth unveiled, betrayal preserved." I drove to her studio at dawn, the city still asleep. The door was unlocked. She'd fled there, perhaps after the gallery. Inside, her sketches littered the floor, half-finished dreams now tainted. I left the canvas on her easel, a monument to her choices. I checked the tracking app one last time. She was at Julian's loft, not home. The image burned, her seeking comfort from him even now. I deleted the app, severing that digital tether. I didn't need to watch her anymore. The world was doing that for me. I drove home, our cedar-walled sanctuary now a mausoleum of memories. Her perfume lingered, her coffee mug sat unwashed. But I felt no nostalgia, only resolve. I packed a suitcase, not sure where I'd go, only that I couldn't stay. By noon, the art world was a furnace of gossip. A critic's column called Elisa's work a fraud, propped by personal indiscretions. Julian's gallery issued a statement, distancing itself from her, claiming ignorance. I laughed, a bitter sound. They were rats fleeing a sinking ship they'd helped scuttle. Friends texted me, assuming I'd seen the news, offering vague support. I didn't reply. They'd know soon enough that Evan Bryce was me, that I'd orchestrated her fall. I wanted them to know, to see the cost of betrayal. I sat in our living room, the getaway cabin reservation still open on my laptop. I canceled it, the dream of rekindling our love now a cruel joke. But I wasn't done with Elise. The canvas was my parting shot, but I'd ensure her betrayal followed her. I'd mail copies of the booklet to every gallery she'd ever pitched, every client she'd courted. Her name would be poison, her art a warning. The aftermath's echoes were loud, but my final act would be louder, a crescendo she'd hear for years. I spent the day erasing Elise from our home, not out of anger but necessity. Her clothes, her sketchbooks, her half-used paints. I boxed them, methodical as a surgeon. Each item was a reminder of her double life, her laughter with Julian, her lies woven into our nights. I didn't burn them. That was too dramatic. Instead, I donated them to a thrift store, her designer scarves and art supplies anonymous now, like her credibility. The house felt lighter, but I didn't. Revenge had carved me hollow, a vessel for justice but not peace. The canvas in her studio was my opening gambit. Now came the endgame. I'd learned Julian was hosting a damage control meeting at his loft, a pathetic attempt to salvage his reputation. Elise would be there, clinging to their tainted bond. I didn't need to see it. I'd ensured the world would. I contacted a local street artist, anonymous but talented, and commissioned a mural on the building opposite Julian's loft. It would depict Elisa's sketch of them, blown up to 10 feet, with the caption, "Art of Betrayal, curated by lies." It would be done overnight, a public scar visible from his windows. I also finalized the booklet's distribution. Using a burner email, I sent PDFs to every major gallery in Seattle, Portland, and beyond, with a note, "Know who you exhibit." I included her clients, her mentors, even her old professors. The art world is small, incestuous. Word would spread like wildfire. I pictured her pitching a show, only to see recognition in their eyes, the booklet's shadow killing her chances. It wasn't enough to ruin her now. I wanted her future to choke on her past. That evening, I sat in a diner, my suitcase in my car, my life unmoored. A news alert pinged. The mural was up, already trending on X, passersby snapping photos. Local artist shamed in public art stunt. The headline read. I imagined Elise seeing it, her face crumpling as Julian's neighbors gawked. The cruelty satisfied me, but only for a moment. I wondered if she'd try to call, to explain. She didn't. My phone stayed silent, a testament to her guilt or her cowardice. I drove to the coast, not to our planned cabin but a cheap motel. The ocean roared, indifferent to my pain. I'd won. Her career was ash, her lover exposed, her name a punchline. But as I stared at the waves, I saw our past. Her wind chime laugh, our coffee mornings, the love I'd thought eternal. I'd destroyed her, but I'd also destroyed us. The final stroke was mine, painted in her ruin, but its weight settled on me, a masterpiece of loss I'd carry alone. The motel room smelled of salt and regret, the ocean's roar a relentless backdrop to my thoughts. I'd dismantled Elisa's world, her art, her reputation, her bond with Julian. But the victory was a hollow echo. I'd expected catharsis, a release from the betrayal that had festered since I found her sketch of him. Instead, I felt unmoored, a man who'd burned his home to catch a thief. My suitcase sat unpacked, my life reduced to a few shirts and a laptop still open to the canceled cabin reservation. Our love, once a tapestry, was now threads scattered by my own hands. I checked X, unable to resist. The mural opposite Julian's loft was viral, its bold lines of Elise and Julian mocked by hashtags like #ArtScandal and #BetrayedOnCanvas. Comments speculated about me, the anonymous husband behind Evan Bryce. Some called me a genius, others a villain. I didn't care. I'd mailed the final batch of booklets that morning, targeting galleries across the country. Elisa's name was poison now, her career a cautionary tale. I imagined her seeing the mural, her studio's cruel canvas, the booklets in every inbox. Did she cry? Did she rage? I'd never know, and that was its own punishment. I drove back to Seattle, not to our home but to a storage unit I'd rented. Inside were relics of us. Photos, her old sketchpads, a scarf she'd knitted me. I'd meant to destroy them, but I couldn't. Instead, I locked them away, a time capsule of a life I'd never reclaim. My phone buzzed, a text from a mutual friend. Claire, Daniel, are you okay? Elise is a mess. What happened? I didn't reply. The truth was spreading and I'd let it. I wasn't hiding anymore. I visited Brew and Muse, the cafe where it all began. The barista, the one who'd called Elise and Julian cozy, recognized me. Heard about the gallery, he said, sliding me a coffee. You the guy who did it? I shrugged, sipping in silence. The cafe felt smaller now, its hipster charm tainted. I left a tip and walked out, the weight of absence heavier than anger. Elise wasn't just gone from my life. She was gone from herself, her art a graveyard of her choices. My revenge was complete, but it hadn't filled the void. I needed one last act, not for her but for me, to close this chapter and walk away. I decided to reveal myself not to Elise, but to the world. The art community was still reeling, and I wanted them to know Evan Bryce was no phantom but a husband scorned. I contacted a local journalist, Sarah, known for her incisive art exposés. Over coffee, I laid out everything. The receipt, the sketches, the emails, my transformation into Evan, the gallery hack, the mural. I showed her the booklet, the hacked footage, even the canvas I'd left in Elisa's studio. I didn't just want her to lose, I said. I wanted her to feel what I felt. Exposed, betrayed. Sarah's eyes widened, but she stayed professional, recording my story. Why go so far? She asked. I paused, the question cutting deeper than I expected. Because she didn't just break my heart, I said. She broke our story, our truth. The article went live the next day, titled The Husband's Masterpiece, a tale of art and vengeance. It detailed my plan with surgical precision, painting Elise and Julian as architects of their own ruin. X exploded, my name trending alongside hers. Some called me a hero, others a monster. I was neither, just a man who'd loved too fiercely. Elisa's response came via a public Instagram post, her first since the scandal. No words, just a photo of her studio's canvas. My cruel replica, with a caption, "I'm sorry. It was too late. Galleries dropped her, clients ghosted, her name blacklisted. Julian's gallery closed, his reputation shredded." I didn't gloat. Their downfall was a byproduct, not the goal. I'd wanted Elise to see herself as I saw her, a liar who'd traded our love for a fleeting muse. I moved to a new apartment, a sterile box with no cedar walls or memories. Friends reached out, some angry, some awed. Claire visited, her eyes red. "She's broken, Daniel," she said. "Was it worth it?" I didn't answer. Elisa's brokenness was her own making, but the question lingered. I'd exposed her, but I'd also exposed myself. A man capable of cruelty I hadn't known I possessed. The public reckoning was complete, but it left me staring into a mirror I didn't recognize, my reflection sharp with edges I couldn't soften. Weeks passed, and Seattle felt like a city of ghosts. I quit my job, unable to focus on code when my mind was a gallery of Elisa's betrayal. I took freelance work, enough to pay for my new life, a minimalist existence of takeout and late-night walks. The mural was gone, painted over, but its shadow lingered on X, in blogs, in whispers at art events. I avoided galleries, cafes, anywhere her world might touch mine. Yet, her voice haunted me. Not her real voice, but the one in my memories, laughing over coffee, humming as she sketched. One night, I found a letter in my mailbox, no return address. Her handwriting, unmistakable, curled across the envelope. I almost burned it, but curiosity won. Inside, a single page. Daniel, I don't expect forgiveness. I lost myself and I lost you. I see your pain in every canvas, every headline. I'm leaving Seattle, starting over where no one knows me. You were my home and I broke it. I'll carry that always. No plea, no excuses, just raw confession. I read it twice, then tore it to pieces. Her words were too late, a ghost's whisper against my resolve. I didn't want her remorse. I wanted oblivion. But the letter stirred something, grief maybe, for the Elise I'd loved, not the one who'd betrayed me. I drove to the coast again, to the cliffs where we'd once picnicked, her sketching the waves, me reading beside her. I scattered the letter's fragments into the wind, watching them vanish. It wasn't closure, but it was release. She was gone, physically and emotionally, and I needed to be gone too, from the man I'd become. I started therapy, a reluctant choice. The counselor, a quiet woman named Dr. Lin, listened as I unraveled my story. You engineered her destruction, she said, not judging, just stating. What did it cost you? I didn't have an answer. I'd lost trust, joy, the ability to see love without suspicion. But I'd gained something too, clarity, a refusal to be invisible. The ghost of Elisa's voice was fading, replaced by my own, stronger but scarred. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to rebuild, to paint a life where her betrayal was just a shadow, not the frame. Months later, I was a different man, or trying to be. I'd moved to Portland, a city close enough to feel familiar, far enough to escape Seattle's ghosts. My new apartment had a small balcony, where I'd sit with coffee, watching the city wake. I'd started painting, not Elisa's bold abstracts, but quiet landscapes, blues and greens that soothed the chaos she'd left. It was amateur, but it was mine, a canvas free of betrayal. I worked remotely, my clients unaware of my past, my name no longer trending. Evan Bryce was dead, and Daniel was learning to live. The art world had moved on. Elise, I heard, was in New Mexico working under a new name, her pieces small, uncelebrated. Julian had vanished, maybe to another city, maybe to obscurity. I didn't care. Their story was no longer mine. I'd stopped checking X, stopped Googling her name. The booklets, the mural, the article, they'd served their purpose. My revenge had been a wildfire, consuming her world, but I was done tending its flames. I wanted growth, not destruction. I reconnected with friends, cautiously. Claire invited me to dinner, and I went, surprised by how easy it was to laugh again. She didn't mention Elise, and I was grateful. I told her about my paintings, my balcony mornings. You sound lighter, she said. I was, not whole but healing. Dr. Lin had helped me see my revenge as a response, not a definition. I'd acted from pain, but I didn't have to live there. I started volunteering at a community center, teaching kids to code, their curiosity a balm to my cynicism. One day, I got an email from Sarah, the journalist. She was writing a follow-up, a reflection on art and accountability. Your story changed how we talk about authenticity, she wrote. Care to comment? I declined. My story wasn't about art. It was about love, trust, and the cost of losing both. I didn't need to be a headline anymore. My new canvas was small, imperfect, but it was mine, painted with colors I chose, not the dark hues of Elisa's betrayal. A year after the gallery, I stood on a Portland hill, my easel set up, painting the skyline at dusk. The city shimmered, its lights a promise of new stories. I was alone, but not lonely. My paintings hung in my apartment, a few in a local cafe, not for fame but for joy. I'd found a rhythm, work, art, therapy, friendships that didn't carry Elise's shadow. Her betrayal was a scar, not a wound, its pain dulled by time and choice. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't need to. She was a chapter, not my book. I thought of her sometimes, wondering if she'd found peace in New Mexico, if her art had survived. I hoped so, not for her sake but for the world's. Art deserved better than our mess. I'd learned to see her betrayal as her failure, not mine. I'd trusted, loved, built a life, and she'd chosen to break it. My revenge, cruel as it was, had been my way of reclaiming power. I wasn't proud of its scale, but I wasn't ashamed either. It was the language of my pain, spoken fluently then, now silenced. Dr. Lin asked me once what I wanted from life now. To be enough, I'd said. I was getting there. I dated, tentatively, a woman named Mara, a botanist with a warm laugh. We talked about plants, not pasts, and it felt like a gift. I didn't tell her about Elise, not yet. That story would come when trust did, and I was learning to trust again, slowly. The horizon beyond was vast, not empty, filled with colors I'd yet to paint. As I finished my skyline, a kid from the community center ran up, waving a coded game he'd made. "Mr. Daniel, look!" he shouted. I smiled, setting down my brush. This was my life now. Small moments, real connections, a canvas of my own making. Elise's betrayal had burned my past, but it hadn't burned me. I was here, painting, living, looking toward a horizon that was mine alone, its light brighter than any revenge could ever be.